When I finally bought my first house, I thought I was making my parents proud. Turns out they weren't proud. They were plotting to take it from me. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Rena, I'm 29, and I've been a nurse in Portland for 7 years. I worked endless double shifts, skipped vacations, and saved every dollar to buy a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a little backyard with patchy grass. But it was mine. The first night I slept there, I felt proud. I finally had something that belonged only to me. When I invited my parents over, I expected smiles and maybe a hug. Instead, my mom, Darla, walked in, looked around, and said, "It's cute, but don't you think it's a bit small for a professional like you?" My dad, Clayton, chuckled and added, "You'll outgrow it fast." I laughed it off, trying not to let it sting. They had always been critical, but I figured they'd come around. A week later, Mom called me with excitement in her voice. "Honey, I found a beautiful 4-bedroom house not far from me. Imagine the family dinners we could have there." I told her I wasn't looking for a bigger place, but she didn't hear me. "It's not just for you," she said. "It's for all of us. So we can be close. You work too much. We could help around the house." That was the start of it. Every call, every visit, turned into a pitch for me to buy a bigger house. My mom acted like it was her dream home, not mine. She'd text me pictures of expensive houses and write, "Wouldn't this be perfect for the family?" My dad stayed quiet most of the time but would drop comments like, "It'd be smart to invest in something bigger before prices rise." It didn't take long before the guilt trip started. Mom would sigh and say, "If you really loved us, you'd want us close." Or, "Some daughters take care of their parents. We're not getting younger, Rena." I tried to laugh it off, but it hurt. I loved my parents, but I could feel the pressure tightening like a rope. One evening, I overheard Mom telling my aunt on the phone, "Once Rena gets the big house, we can finally move in. She owes us that much." My stomach turned cold. That's when I realized this wasn't about family bonding. It was about control. I didn't say anything that night, but something inside me shifted. The house I once saw as my peace now felt like a target. My parents didn't want to be proud of me. They wanted to benefit from it. And that's where everything began to unravel. Mom's calls started coming every morning. She'd sound cheerful, but there was always an edge to it. "Rena, I found another one," she'd say. "It's perfect, 4 bedrooms, big yard, close to the city. We could all live there together. Wouldn't that be nice?" Every time she said we, something in my chest tightened. She never said you or your home anymore. It was always our house, like the decision was already made. Dad would chime in from the background, his voice calm but heavy. "You don't want to wait too long, sweetheart. Good houses go fast. This one's a smart investment." At first, I tried to keep it light. I'd tell them I was fine where I was, that I wasn't ready for another mortgage. But they never listened. They'd show up unannounced with printed listings, spread them across my kitchen table, and talk about how the family could decorate. Mom pointed to a photo of a huge suburban house with a wraparound porch. "This would be perfect for us," she said, smiling like she could already see herself living there. I started realizing what this really meant. It wasn't about family closeness. It was about them getting comfortable, at my expense. They wanted a retirement plan with my name on it. One night, my phone buzzed. It was my younger brother, Mason. We weren't super close, but his message made my stomach twist. "Just a heads up. Mom and Dad keep talking about moving in with you once you buy the new place. They're saying you'll secure the family's future. Be careful." I sat there staring at the screen, my heart pounding. Mason wasn't the type to exaggerate. I called my parents that night and asked straight out, "Are you planning to move in with me if I buy a bigger house?" There was silence for a few seconds. Then Mom let out a soft laugh. "Rena, don't be ridiculous. We're just trying to help you find something suitable for your lifestyle. We're family, we should be close." Dad sighed like he was the one being wronged. "You always think the worst of us. We're just offering advice." But I wasn't imagining it. Every word, every suggestion, every picture they sent had been about their comfort, not mine. They didn't even try to hide it any. The next weekend, they invited me over for dinner. The moment I walked in, Mom started again. "Honey, it's strange watching you struggle alone when we could make things easier together." Her eyes watered as she reached across the table. "Other daughters take care of their parents. I guess you're too busy for that." Dad stayed quiet, staring at his plate, playing the part of the disappointed father. I felt trapped between anger and guilt, like I was the selfish one. Driving home that night, I couldn't shake her words. The pressure wasn't just financial anymore. It was emotional, heavy, constant. I knew this wasn't going to stop unless I made it stop. But I also knew that standing up to them would mean breaking something I could never fix again. I finally gave in. I told Mom I'd go see one of the houses she wouldn't stop talking about. Her excitement was instant, almost rehearsed. "You'll love it, honey," she said, her voice bright. It's everything we've been looking for. When I pulled up, she and Dad were already there, standing with a man in a suit. This is Wes, Mom said proudly. Our realtor. She didn't even pause before correcting herself. I mean the realtor. I smiled tightly, pretending not to notice. The house was huge, too big, too polished, nothing like what I wanted. As soon as we stepped inside, Mom started assigning room. This would be perfect for your father and me, she said, walking straight into the master bedroom. She ran her hand across the window frame and looked back at Dad. Plenty of light, don't you think? Dad nodded, then turned to the realtor. We'd probably change the carpet in here. Something warmer. I stood in the doorway, invisible. Every time I tried to speak, Mom cut me off. Rena doesn't like dark wood, she said once, waving me off when I tried to correct her. They spoke over me like I wasn't even there, planning out furniture, curtains, renovations. All I could hear was we, are us. The realtor smiled awkwardly. So, are you the buyer? He asked, glancing at me. Mom answered before I could open my mouth. Of course she is, she said, laughing lightly. Our daughter's doing very well for herself. I wanted to leave right then, but I stayed through the whole tour, nodding at the right times, pretending to listen. My chest felt tight the entire time. Every corner of that house felt like a trap I was walking into willingly. When it was finally over, I stepped outside for air. My parents stayed behind with the realtor, pretending to ask about closing costs. I leaned against my car, trying to steady my breathing. That's when I heard them. Their voices drifted through the open window of the living room. Mom's tone dropped to a whisper. If she buys this one, we can sell ours before winter. Finally, we can relax a little. Dad chuckled. About time she gave something back. She owes us that much. The words hit me like a slap. I froze, staring at the driveway gravel, hearing every casual syllable. They weren't planning to move in later. They were already planning the sale of their own house, as if my future home was a guarantee. I didn't wait for them to come out. I got in my car and drove off before they could see my face. My hands shook on the steering wheel the whole way home. That night, I sat in the dark living room of my little house, the one I bought on my own, and listened to the quiet. It felt heavier than usual, because now I knew for sure. The betrayal wasn't something I was imagining. It was already in motion, and I was the one funding it. After the house tour, things shifted fast. My parents stopped pretending to be subtle. They began talking about money like it already belonged to them. Mom called one afternoon, her voice light, like she was suggesting a fun idea. Rena, if we all went in together, the bank would give a much better rate. You'd qualify for something bigger. I frowned. Together how? Just a joint loan, she said quickly, purely for the discount. We'd co-sign, help with the process. It's normal, sweetheart. I told her no. I didn't want anyone attached to my name or credit. She went quiet for a moment, then changed the subject like it was nothing. But the next week, things took a turn I didn't see coming. At work, I got a call from my loan officer, Mr. Randall. He sounded confused. Miss Harper, he said carefully. I just wanted to confirm. Are you adding your parents to your mortgage application? I froze. What? No. Why? He hesitated. Well, your parents reached out. They said you wanted to make them co-buyers. They sent over some forms with their information already filled out. My chest tightened. I thanked him, hung up, and immediately called Mom. She picked up, cheerful as ever. Hey, honey. I was just thinking about dinner. What did you do? I asked, my voice shaking. Do about what? The mortgage. You contacted my loan officer. You tried to put your names on my papers. There was a pause, then the fake innocence dropped. Rena, calm down. We were just trying to help you get the best rate. You're being dramatic. Without asking me, you don't understand how this works. We're trying to make your life easier. You should be grateful. Dad's voice came through the speaker, rough and tired. We're your family. We're not stealing from you. You act like we're strangers. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My hands were trembling when I called Ivy, my closest friend. She came over that night, bringing a stack of takeout boxes and a laptop. We went through every email, every form. She opened one attachment I hadn't noticed before. A document my parents had forwarded to the bank. Her eyes widened. They actually listed themselves as co-buyers, she said quietly. Look, their signatures are right here. For a second, everything around me went quiet. All the manipulation, the guilt, the pushing, this was the end goal. They wanted legal control. My own parents had tried to take my house out from under me. The next evening, they invited me over for dinner. I went, mostly to look them in the eye. The table was set like nothing had happened. Mom smiled too sweetly. Dad poured me wine like a peace offering. Halfway through, Mom said, "You'll see, once the paperwork is done, you'll feel better." I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out. No words, no explanation. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed with a message from Dad. 5 words that made my skin crawl. You owe us everything you have. I drove to their house without calling first. The anger sat low in my stomach the whole way there, heavy and hot. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Mom's flowers blooming under the porch light, everything looking calm and ordinary. But I wasn't there for calm. I was there for truth. Mom opened the door, smiling like nothing had happened. "Rena, what a surprise." I walked past her into the living room. "We need to talk," I said. My voice came out colder than I meant, but I didn't care. She blinked, confused. "About what?" "About the mortgage. About you contacting my bank. About you trying to put your names on my loan." For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then her hand went to her chest and her face crumpled. "Oh, sweetheart, you've got it all wrong." "No," I said, cutting her off. "I saw the papers. You signed them." She sank into the couch, the picture of heartbreak. "I only wanted to make sure I'd be taken care of when I'm old. You know how hard your father and I worked for. I thought we could share something." "Share?" I snapped. "You tried to take what's mine. That's not sharing." Dad appeared from the hallway, his expression unreadable. He didn't say a word, just crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. The silence stretched. I took a breath, my hands shaking. "I already spoke to the bank. If you try anything else, I'll make sure they block all outside contact." That's when Dad finally spoke, his voice low but sharp. "You're threatening your own parents now?" "I'm protecting myself." He straightened, eyes narrowing. "Ungrateful. That's what you are. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? By accusing us like we're thieves." Mom started crying then, loud, messy sobs that filled the room. "I just wanted us to be close," she said between tears. "You don't understand what it's like getting older, knowing your own daughter wants nothing to do with you." I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let myself look away. "You're not the victim here. You lied to me. You tried to steal from me, and you're still pretending it's love." Dad slammed his hand against the table, making the picture frames rattle. "Watch how you talk to your mother," he said. Something inside me broke right then, not from fear, but from clarity. I grabbed my purse from the chair, walked to the door, and said, "I'm done." Mom's crying turned into gasps. Dad muttered something under his breath, but I didn't stay to hear it. The door closed behind me with a sound that felt final. In the car, I sat there for a long time before starting the engine. My hands trembled, tears spilling down my face without sound. But underneath the pain, something else flickered, quiet, steady, unfamiliar. It wasn't relief, not yet. It was the first small taste of freedom. That night, I blocked them both. After a week of silence, my phone stopped lighting up with blocked messages. The quiet felt strange at first, but it grew comfortable. Still, the anger hadn't faded. I wasn't content just walking away. I wanted to make sure they'd never have a way back in. One night, sitting at my kitchen table, I opened my laptop and started looking at listing. Not for them this time, for me. I needed distance, a place they couldn't find me. Hours later, I found it. A small house tucked near a lake 2 hours east of the city. Surrounded by trees, no neighbors close enough to gossip, no shared fences or nosy look, just still water and silence. I didn't tell anyone except Ivy. She didn't ask questions, just nodded. "When do we start packing?" We planned it carefully. I took extra shifts at the hospital, letting my parents believe I was drowning in work. Ivy came by late at night with boxes and coffee. We packed quietly, room by room, until everything I owned sat neatly in her truck. The house that once felt safe looked empty again, stripped of every trace of me. I signed the papers for the sale the next morning before sunrise. The realtor handled everything under my middle name. I asked her not to post pictures, not to use my forwarding address. I paid in full for the new place using my savings, no loans, no paper trail linking it to the old one. When it was done, I felt a strange calm wash over me. That evening, Ivy and I loaded the last few boxes into her car. "You sure you don't want to tell them?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "They'll find out. Just not from me." We drove through the night. By the time dawn broke, the city was a blur in the rearview mirror. The new house sat at the edge of the lake, pale blue with white shutters, sunlight bouncing off the water behind it. When I stepped out of the car, the air smelled clean. I hadn't realized how heavy my old life had become until I breathed that air. We unloaded everything in silence. Ivy helped me set up the bed, hung one curtain, then hugged me tightly before leaving. "You're finally free," she said. The next day, I turned off my phone completely. No calls, no updates, no explanations. Just quiet. Back in Portland, my parents must have grown impatient. Mason later told me they'd gone to my old house to check on me, claiming they were worried because I hadn't answered. They knocked, peeked through the windows, then asked the neighbors if I'd been seen. Mrs. Keene, the woman next door, told them simply, "Oh, that house was sold last week. New owners move in soon." I wasn't there to see their faces, but I pictured the shock, the confusion, the slow realization that I had slipped completely out of reach. They had spent months trying to control me, and now they didn't even know where I was. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. Weeks passed before I opened my email again. The inbox was overflowing, every subject line shouting my name. Most were from Mom. The first one began with, "We're your parents. How could you abandon us?" and went on for paragraphs about betrayal, disappointment, and how families are supposed to stick together. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Every message had the same rhythm, guilt wrapped in affection, threats hidden under concern. "We only wanted to help. You've broken your father's heart. You'll regret cutting us out." Each one felt like an echo from the old house I'd left behind. I deleted them all without reading the rest. Mason was the only person I kept contact with. He'd text every few weeks, never prying, just checking in. One evening, he finally told me what was going on. "Mom and Dad sold their place. They thought you'd have that new house ready for them by now. When they realized you'd vanished, they panicked." I stared at the screen, my heart beating slow and steady. "Are they okay?" I typed back. He sent a long pause before replying. "Not really. Dad put most of the sale money into some investment a friend told him about. It tanked. They're stuck renting a small apartment on the edge of town. Mom picked up a cashier job at the grocery store. She's embarrassed. They keep saying it's temporary." I didn't know what to say. The part of me that used to ache for them felt strangely still. There was no satisfaction, no joy in their struggle, just understanding. They had built their lives on control and comfort, assuming someone else would carry the weight when things fell apart. When that someone disappeared, the world caught up to them. A few days later, another email appeared. This one was shorter, quieter. "I don't understand what we did to deserve this. We just wanted to be part of your life." The line should have hurt, but it didn't. It just felt empty, like hearing a song you'd stopped liking years ago. Every morning, I'd sit by the lake with coffee in hand, watching the fog roll off the water. The stillness became my routine. Some nights I'd think about Mason and how he was stuck between all of it, the guilt, the distance, the quiet that now filled our family. But then I'd remind myself, I didn't leave to punish anyone. I left to breathe. From time to time, I'd get small updates through him. Dad's investment losses deepening, Mom complaining about her aching feet after long shifts. They hadn't changed, not really. They still blamed me for everything. But I didn't need their version of love anymore. I stopped checking the old email account altogether. I built a new one under a name only Mason knew. The rest of their words could stay unread, buried in that inbox forever. Each night, when the sun slipped behind the trees and the lake turned gold, I felt a strange peace settle over me. It wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was the calm that comes when you finally understand that walking away was the real answer all. Almost a year had gone by when the letter arrived. It was tucked between bills and grocery flyers, the familiar handwriting looping across the envelope in blue ink. My chest tightened before I even opened it. Inside was a single page, written carefully, like every word had been rehearsed. "Rena, I miss you. I know I made mistakes. Your father and I only wanted what was best, but maybe we went about it the wrong. Please come have dinner with us. No lectures, no arguments, just a meal and a chance to talk things out. Love, Mom." For a long time, I stared at the paper, trying to feel something. Anger, sadness, nostalgia. But mostly there was emptiness. Still, some part of me, the part that hadn't completely gone numb, wondered if maybe they had changed. That evening, I drove back toward the city. The streets felt smaller than I remembered. Their new place sat in a quiet complex near the highway, smaller than their old house, but kept spotless. The porch light flickered as I walked up the steps. Mom opened the door before I knocked. Her face lit up like she'd been waiting all day. "Rena." "Oh, sweetheart, look at you." She hugged me before I could stop her, the scent of her old perfume clinging to my jacket. Inside, the table was set neatly. Roast chicken, candles, even a pie cooling on the counter. Dad sat at the head of the table, smiling like nothing had ever gone wrong. "Glad you came," he said, his tone calm measured. I sat down, trying to read them. For the first few minutes, the conversation was polite, almost awkwardly so. Mom asked about work, my new place, my health. She laughed too loudly, complimented my hair, and kept reaching to touch my hand. "It's so good to see you," she said softly. "We've been thinking about family a lot lately. What really matters, you know." Her eyes glistened, the picture of remorse. I wanted to believe it, I really did. But then, while reaching for the salt, something on the counter caught my eye, a bright red folder half hidden under a stack of mail. In neat letters across the cover, "For sale listing." My stomach sank. I didn't say anything right away. I just watched as Mom followed my gaze and quickly slid the folder aside, pretending not to notice. I forced a small smile. "Looking at houses again?" Her face went pale for a split second before she recovered. "Oh, that? Just something I was holding for a friend." Dad cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "You know your mother. Always organizing things." The air in the room shifted. The warmth vanished, replaced by that old, familiar heaviness. I leaned back in my chair, realizing this dinner wasn't about forgiveness. It was about opportunity. They hadn't changed. The apology, the kindness, the meal, it was just another setup. Mom started talking again, her voice bright, almost desperate. You should come by more often. Maybe we could help you decorate, maybe even. I didn't let her finish. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the floor. You don't have to pretend, I said quietly. You're not trying to make peace. You're just trying to start over, the same way you always do. Their faces froze. I could see the shock, the denial, the guilt starting to flicker. But I didn't stay to hear their excuses. I turned, walked to the door, and stepped back into the cool night air. Behind me, Mom called my name, her voice cracking. I didn't look back. The smell of dinner followed me out, heavy and false. By the time I reached my car, I knew with absolute certainty, whatever love I'd been hoping for had never really been love at all. The next morning, I drove back. I didn't plan it. I woke up with their faces still in my mind and the truth sitting like a weight in my chest. I was done pretending there was anything left to save. They were in the kitchen when I walked in, Mom rinsing dishes, Dad reading the paper like nothing had happened. The sound of the door startled them both. Mom froze, then forced a smile. Rena, you came back. I was just about to call. I set my keys on the counter, cutting her off. You're selling again. The color drained from her face. What? The folder. On the counter last night. Same listings, same neighborhoods. You're planning to move again. Into my life. Into my space. Dad folded the paper, slow and deliberate. You're imagining things, he said flatly. Your mother looks at houses the way people look at magazines. I met his stare. Stop lying. I've spent enough years pretending not to notice what you're doing. Mom's lip trembled. Sweetheart, please, we just... No, I said, my voice steady. You're not doing this out of love. You're doing it because you think I'm your backup plan. You sold your house for money you wasted, and now you're trying again. But this time, you're not using me to fix it. Her eyes filled with tears, soft and practiced. We're your parents, she whispered. You can't talk to us like this. I stepped closer, my hands shaking but my tone calm. I can, because you stopped being my parents the moment you saw me as a paycheck. Dad slammed his fist against the table. Ungrateful. We gave you everything. I didn't flinch. You gave me guilt. You gave me fear. And you taught me how to survive without you. Mom began to cry harder, covering her face with her hand. You can't mean that, she said between sobs. We just wanted to live near you. Is that such a crime? I looked at her, at the tears, the trembling shoulders, the same old performance. But this time I felt nothing. No pity, no anger. Just quiet understanding of what had always been true. I know about the plan, I said. You're not moving in with me. You're not touching a cent of my money. You're not even part of my future. Financially and emotionally, you're done. Dad's voice cracked, but his pride wouldn't let him soften. You'll regret this. Blood is blood, Rena. I took a slow breath. You're right, I said. You raised me to take care of myself. Congratulations, I finally did. The silence that followed was heavy, final. Mom's crying filled the room, echoing against the walls. I picked up my keys, turned toward the door, and didn't look back. Outside, the air felt colder, cleaner. I walked to my car without a single word more. The door shut behind me with a sound that felt like the end of something that should have ended long ago. The seasons shifted slowly after that day. I didn't hear from them again. No calls, no letters, not even a rumor of where they'd gone. For the first time in years, my life was quiet in a way that didn't feel empty. I filled my days with simple things, morning walks around the lake, long shifts at the clinic, evenings spent cooking in silence. The house no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like my own skin, warm and steady. Each day I woke up without waiting for someone else's voice to tell me what to do. Mason started visiting every few weekends. He'd drive up from the city, bringing groceries or just his easy laugh. The first time he came, he stood on my porch for a long moment before saying, "You look different, lighter." We'd sit by the water, talking about small things, work, weather, the stray cat that kept sneaking into my shed. Sometimes he'd mention our parents, but never with blame. Just quiet updates. They sold their apartment, he said once. Moved somewhere smaller, out near the coast. I think they finally got tired of fighting everything. I listened, feeling no anger, no relief, only distance. The story between us had ended, and I had no desire to reopen it. They had made their choices. So had I. As the months passed, I started planting a garden along the edge of the property. Small herbs, a few flowers. The earth under my hands reminded me that growth can be silent and still count as progress. Some evenings, Ivy would stop by after work, and we'd share dinner on the porch, watching the sky turn copper over the lake. It took time to stop flinching at unknown numbers on my phone, to stop expecting some new attempt to reel me back in. But that fear faded slowly, until it was gone. In its place came something gentler, a sense of belonging to myself. Mason visited again one weekend in early fall. We walked the edge of the lake, the leaves crunching under our shoes. He said, "They don't talk about you much anymore. I think they finally accepted it." I nodded. "Good," was all I said. He smiled, and that was enough. That night, after he left, I sat alone by the water. The surface was calm, the reflection of the sky soft and broken by ripples. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the pressure, the breaking, the leaving. It no longer felt like anger or pain. It felt like distance that I'd earned. For years, I had confused peace with silence, guilt with love. Now I knew the difference. Peace wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing not to be owned by what hurt me. The last of the sun slipped behind the trees. I watched the colors fade and whispered to myself, barely loud enough to hear. I didn't lose them. I just stopped letting them own me. The water stayed still. The air was cool and quiet. For the first time in my life, that quiet finally felt like home. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away from my parents? Or should I have given them one more chance? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.